Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. It's Julian and Jordan in the morning with Off the Top Podcast.
Wow, you're rolling with that. Everybody, I hope you guys, well, I just want you guys to know that that was totally unscripted, and he just said, hey diddle diddle, something about a cat and a fiddle without any retakes.
Yeah, I'm not really sure where Hey Diddle Diddle came from or if I've ever really heard that song or poem or what it is in my lifetime. But, I mean, it was just in the top of my head, so off the top, and there it was. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. Today we're going to get on a little bit more abstract subject about what really makes you, you, or what are the events in your life that have kind of could shape things or have shaped things or just various little experiences that come and go that may mold you into some decisions later in life.
Yeah, and so like Julian said, this is pretty abstract, and so we're going to be attacking this in a very like what we believe way. So I hope you guys like follow us with this journey because who knows where we're going to be going. But the first thing I would like to say about what makes somebody like what makes me me, I personally believe, and this might be a contrarian take, but I don't believe that there's a lot that truly makes me me that can't be replicated somewhere else.
Go further into that because it's kind of I kind of get what you're saying, but I need a little bit of a detailed look at that.
Yeah, so I mean, I've thought about this quite a bit and had some conversations about it with several people that I really respect. And the reason that I say that is because I don't think that my body is me. So if you can take away my body, or let's say that I have a clone somewhere, does that mean that that person's me as well because they have my same body? No. Like, you know, if there's two Julians out there, you would be the real Julian. That other Julian would be an imposter. It's not like they're both you.
Yeah, that's true. I guess, yeah, on the body side, there's not much you can do to change. I mean, you're kind of genetically built, or you maybe do some things like work out or eat a certain way as opposed to your, you know, the doppelganger that's out there may not do that and may just have a similar look. But I think I kind of agree with that physically. I think there's a lot mentally or emotionally that is built through, just kind of life in general that makes you very unique. Even if you had a doppelganger or something, I think that makes you very unique from the other one.
Yeah. And at that point, where do you think you can strip down? Like if Julian was an onion and we just pulled off layers, and so we just pulled off the body layer of that onion, how far do you think we can go until this is Julian at an ethereal level in the fact of like, it's very pure. There's nothing else we can take away. This is like Julian. You know what I'm saying?
I think in that respect, you'd have to get rid of all the physical elements. So you'd go like body, obviously, and then probably organs or, you know, your insides. And then you'd have, if people believe in a spirit or a soul, or maybe just like your thoughts, or events that were, if you could cage those into a shoebox or a mason jar of events or experiences, I think that's when you get the twist on how people are, how they're different.
So you don't think that, well, for instance, let's say that you do have a soul, just for the statement of this argument, and then would your soul be exactly what it is when you were born with it, or is it changing? So basically, Julian's soul when he was 8 isn't his soul now. I think
it changes. I think it's determined by a lot of different things, or your outlook on life. I don't know if you'd consider that part of the soul. I don't know what that really, the soul means. It just was something I used as an example, but I think it definitely changes or shapes up in your life. Cause I don't believe, like, say you grow up and you really want to be a scientist or an astronaut, and then something happens and then you're just driven to be a basketball player. I think that's something that shifts in your desires and your passions, which I probably accumulates into this soul thing or whatever you want to call it.
So in that aspect then, like, and granted, like, experiences do play a part in your life and how you see things. I mean, I hope they do, because without experiences, you're not really learning much. And in that same breath, then would experiences be a part of your soul or as influential in your soul than as, your soul itself? Because without it, you're just the person that you were born with, how you were born as far as personality, intelligence, and everything. And what I'm trying to argue is that experience is basically like a blanket on top of those things.
I don't know. I think they're connected, or they have a relationship. I don't know if they integrate or it's one over the other, but very abstract analogy is going to come up. But think about all the people we knew that were homeschooled or like didn't go into the public world until high school or later, and the differences in outlooks and opinions they have as opposed to the people who were, doing different things in that, or exposed to different things in the school system. Or even if someone who was like, not trapped, but just inside for 40 years, not communicating with anyone, is going to have a completely different take or unique look or life outlook than we would as someone who's out in the world for 40 years or whatever that may be. And I think those go hand in hand. I don't think you come out, you do all that, and then you come out and you're just exactly the same. I think there's a lot of things that kind of poke at each other to shape outlooks or, make that personality that person, or et cetera.
Okay. So I hope you guys follow along with me with this point, because it's going to sound pretty wild. And I'm going to ask Julian this question because I'm trying to get down to the root of it. But basically, to make this analogy, that sounds like, if I'm using your basis, that it could be possible that Hitler and Gandhi had the same type of personality, same type of soul, but had different experiences. So they could be born the same person.
Yeah. I would say that is very true. And I would say they are more similar than they are different in the fact that they were extremely passionate people on different ends on the spectrum. I mean, it might sound terrible when you're talking about Hitler and Gandhi, but what they, I guess, were battling for is you look at one as a villain and one as a hero. They're both very similar. In fact, they really want to do something. They're going to do things at all costs to get there. Gandhi does a fast and other things, and Hitler obviously does terrible things. But I mean, in that sense, it's very similar besides, maybe there's an experience or where they were raised that pushed them a certain way.
So would you say then that somebody isn't really responsible for, I mean, granted, you are responsible for the experiences you have in a very broad sense, but let's say that somebody broke into your house as a child, and then you carry that, and you're obviously worried about that in the future, being that's a very, shocking and traumatizing experience. So you really don't have any control over that. So you wouldn't have any control over who you were in a point.
I don't know. That one I kind of disagree with. I mean, yeah, it's going to happen and you're going to remember, but I think that puts you more in control of who you are, right? Like, I think that puts you in the control if you take if you want to be really violent about it, and that's, you want to get revenge, or you feel like the world is picking on you, you can go that route, right? Or you can go the route of the safety route or the strength, or like, how do I prevent this, or what am I going to do next time? And those are two different routes from there that you get to choose. I don't really ever think there's just like a middle route to something that happens that you just keep going in a straight line. I think at every experience or decision or something that comes up, you have to choose a way to go. And there may be multiple options, more than two, but I think that's on you. And I think that's what makes you you, is that those decisions you make over time, you kind of start choosing a similar decision, and then you keep going down that road that's way opposite of a road that, your doppelganger's on or someone else.
Okay. No, that actually sounds really cool. And I can kind of vibe with that in the fact that throughout any experience that you have, or you guys have listening, you are forced to react in some sort of way. Like, there's no way around it. So for instance, like that scenario, if somebody breaks into your house, you're forced to react to that in some sort of way. You can't I would say it's almost impossible to not react. And not if somebody's actually in your house, but let's say somebody broke in and you come home and your stuff's all thrashed. You are forced to react in the fact that you can react in the way of not doing anything, but that's still a reaction. Mm-hmm. So there's no like static after you experience that.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that's one of those experiences that kind of culminates into like what makes you you. And I think there's a lot that go on. I think a lot of it is very influential in those years that you're young and you don't really understand what's going on. Because everyone has that. I don't know if I don't say it's everyone, but a majority of people don't remember, events before they were 4. Some may remember major events, but I think there's a lot of decisions you make as a young child that kind of help shape you until you're at least, 11 or 12. And then you kind of do another path and et cetera, et cetera. Then you hit 30 or 40 and you do another path and et cetera. I think it's very interesting how those decisions are made and like where, I don't know where a majority of them happen, but I'd like to imagine like when you're young, there's a lot of things that you subliminally take in that kind of shape you.
Yeah. And I think that you're kind of supporting the thing that I was saying earlier in the fact of you're kind of out of control of who you are if that's the way you go about it. Because especially as a child, I mean, what do you have control over that your parents don't actually control? I mean, they control when you eat, what you listen to, what you watch, what you hear, what you do. And so in that aspect, you kind of don't have control over who you are. If we're using your premise of, you are what your experiences are and your experiences are as important or as integral to you as your actual, your born characteristics, your born personality, let's say, if we can put that as the soul.
Yeah. And I think that's something too that I was going to say. I don't think anyone can 100% create themselves or make 100% them, right? Is that a little abstract?
Are you saying basically that nobody is solely responsible for the person they are?
Yeah, 100%. That's kind of the route I'm going. I don't think anyone's fully in charge of the person they are today or the events that got there or the decisions that's made. Like based on what you said, like there's a good portion of your life where you have to depend on someone else to make your decisions or to survive to a certain extent. And those are going to influence you. And maybe, your route of education, like you can learn things on your own, but a lot of that stuff for a good portion of time until 6th grade, there's not a lot of people that are going in a complete different education route where they're learning basic math. And then on the side, they're, learning how to become an electrical engineer in 3rd grade. They might be interested in it, but you're still in that streamlined education system or experience system. And that's going to kind of shape a foundation, I think.
Then at that point, you could have 2 Julians. And the fact if the one person who happened to have the same personality and characteristics as you, like let's say we set up a simulation and the fact that we figured out every single thing you've done from now, this very point till the day you were born, and we just ran them through that, then theoretically they could be you as well.
I think to a certain point you could try to replicate it as best as you could. I think that's where maybe genetics play something different, right? So maybe you're I wouldn't say I'm tall, but I'm taller than average. I would say I'm a little bit more athletic than the people usually in this area, not like freakishly athletic, but if you get some dude that comes in that's 5'4" and kind of round, like some of the events that happen in my life or the things that I've done, we'll say related to sports, which is an integral portion of where I am today, he wouldn't be able to replicate those, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. There's definitely a physical aspect of your experiences that you can't. So for instance, let's say that in Jurassic Park, this is coming to my mind. In Jurassic Park 2, I'm not sure specifically the title of it, but there's a point where, and sorry for all you guys who have been procrastinating for so long and not watching it, but there's a part where basically this trailer is hanging off a cliff. And at the bottom of the trailer is this woman, and she's laying on this glass panel and she can't get up. The glass is cracking. A guy at the top is trying to reach basically like a radio or a satchel or something so that it doesn't fall and break the glass, and then she falls through. And if that guy had the wingspan of Rudy Gobert, that's an NBA player who has a wingspan of 7'3". I'm sure that experience would have gone different than in the movie when it fell.
Yeah, I think that's a good look at the physical side. I think also you have to look at the intelligence or decision-making side too, right? So we take all the aspects that make Jordan, and maybe you put someone in there that doesn't have the same thought process you do, because I think that's organic, right? I think the way you think is not 100% on you, but as you go, that just shifts to how you want to think about things. So maybe you get someone who's not as intelligent, or someone who understands a concept naturally a little bit better, or one of those people who sees things in colors or in different ways. Like, that's also got to make things a lot different if they can fly through how to become an archaeologist class in 1 week, as opposed to, like, maybe say your route took you 2.5 weeks, right? There's, I think, something that changes there as well.
Yeah, definitely. And for all of those who are wondering, I wasn't held back from archaeologist school. I just did it again because it was fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you put it back in that situation of Jurassic Park, right? So maybe you're not physical, or you don't have the physical ability to reach that far, but maybe you're a great decision maker, and, you know, he cuts off a seatbelt or something like that and whips it down or something, like, and really fast. That's a whole nother thing that, you know, in the movie they don't think about doing, or something along those lines.
Yeah, definitely. So in that aspect, then, I mean, you could have somebody who's similar to you, have similar experiences as you, but isn't you, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think you could say, even if you had a twin sibling, brother, sister, like, and they went everywhere with you, right? They did. I mean, you're talking identical twins. I think they're still very different in the terms of, you know, their thought process or how they look on things. You know, maybe one's an optimist, one's a pessimist, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that aspect as well. So what do you think for those people who are, like, and granted, this is a personality thing, I believe, those people who are very materialistic, in the fact that the materials make them, and I wouldn't say that I am, I wouldn't say that you are, but would you then say that possibly the things that they have, like physical things, would also be a part of them? Like in a bare essentialist way, as far as, like, you can't strip Jamarcus George. I don't know who that is. I just made that name up.
Curious George's uncle.
From, you know, you can't strip him down any more than, you know, his Nikes or his Jordan collection.
Materialistically. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's, things that shape certain people. And I think, you know, they create connections with their cars, maybe their books or their televisions. And I think that becomes, some people in today's society where media is at or materials are, that it does become who they are to a certain extent. But I think those people are a little bit more easy to persuade or copy, or if you wanted to replicate someone, would be a little bit easier, because say they're really connected to the car because of this car was used in their favorite movie and they know all the lines from it or something like that. You could put someone in that same shoes, like, hey, you know, you can learn all the lines of this. And then, like, oh, wow, you like the car too? Sweet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. And so then you kind of, I mean, maybe that alludes to the fact that there are, well, how about this? Do you believe that there are people that can, like, everyone can be replicated? Some people can't be replicated and others can? Or that nobody can be replicated?
Good question. I don't think anyone can be replicated, because I think there's so many nuances and little things that make up people, or they do, from facial expressions to hairstyle. I mean, that's physical, to thought process, to, you know, personal organization methods, or, you know, how you view a certain color. Like, I mean, I guess that's really abstract, but obviously the blue when I say blue right now, the blue you guys see is more likely than not slightly a different hue, even if it's off by 1 RGB or something like that, it's slightly different. And I think there's so many of those little nuances that it makes it really hard. But I do think there's a good portion that you can replicate of someone, but I wouldn't consider that replicating someone, if that makes sense.
Because I mean, after your premise of saying that nobody can be replicated, then you know, setting up somebody to try to be replicated, it wouldn't work. So that's not replication, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I was saying you can replicate, like, I write right-handed. You can replicate they write right-handed. Then you get down to the details, like the way you curve your A is going to be a little bit different than the way they curve their A. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, yeah.
So, but in that kind of tangent we just went on, what are some of the things that you think more importantly, shape people over the course of their life? And how often do you think that changes or plays off of one another?
I think, and I kind of talked about this, I think, on the Lazy Saturday podcast, that the main factor of people is, like, you know, pain. Like, how much pain they have, when they have the pain, how much they like the pain, where's the pain coming from, or, like, basically discomfort is, if I can, like, strip it down to even lower, because pain obviously has some sort of connotations to being physical, but discomfort can be, you know, emotional, physical, mental. Mm-hmm. And so I think that discomfort is all it is. Discomfort in any experience is what's the real shaper. Because as natural human beings, I think naturally we like to avoid as much discomfort as possible just to keep in homeostasis.
And do you think that changes over time? Like, you will do more to stay away from that pain? Or do you think it becomes something that, you know, people feed off to make those decisions?
I think that it's definitely something that is changed, but in a sense of, like, a very intellectual change. So, for instance, as a kid, I probably wouldn't like the discomfort of working out, or maybe I would. Or let's say this, let's take a kid who doesn't like working out, a child. And then when you see them as an adult, they're huge, like ripped. And it's because intellectually they believe that their goal of, you know, being fit or stronger or whatever goal it is around lifting weights and getting stronger is more important than the discomfort that they dislike naturally.
Okay. Yeah, I can pick up what you're saying there. And then I think going further into that, like, I guess something we really haven't touched on is the genetic factor, right? So you hear all these stories. Like, I listened to a podcast by NPR called How I Built This, and it was talking about the guy who founded Atari and Chuck E. Cheese, right? 2 multi-million-dollar companies, sold them for tons of money in the 70s. And like other podcasts, one of his main stories was he figured out if he went into school, like in first or second grade, right? He could sell his strawberries. The store was selling them for 35 cents a pound or something like that. And he could sell them for 25 cents a pound, you know, kind of short the local market, but he was still making money from it. Or those kids that have that desire to, you know, really work hard and study at that age. Do you think that's genetics, or do you think that's, you know, personal motivation or something that you find as someone that kind of shapes you as you get older? Because it seems like a lot of those people who have that instinct younger shape themselves into something as time goes on.
Yeah. But the tough thing is, I would say, in answering that question, is everything is so interconnected and, you know, leaning on each other. And the fact that even as a kid, he's had so many experiences that you can't just say purely, oh, genetics made him do that. Mm-hmm. You know, it could be an entrepreneurial presence with his parents or things of that nature. So I would say that genetics play a huge role in predisposition, as far as also physically. So physically, let's say that let's say a person could be the same, like, you know, if I clone 2 people and I just changed one of their genetic code to have extremely an extreme amount of hair growth. And the other one I didn't. And it's fairly innocuous. And, if you think about it, I mean, it's not like I'm changing one to breathe fire or anything. Mm-hmm. But through experiences, it'll change them. As far as, who they really are deep down inside, I don't think that changes if I pulled the perfect copy, which I don't think I could do. Mm-hmm. But I do believe that if you looked 5 years from now, if you looked at them as kids, they'd be quite different. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if anything else is different than them. It's just the experiences that they had. So I think it does, but in a secondary effect. It doesn't change the person you are deep down inside, but it does change the person you act like.
Yeah, that's kind of what was going to be my next question. I don't believe a lot of people say if you could copy DNA and put it exactly into someone else, it's going to make them the same person. I don't think that's true. I think you can perfectly copy DNA. I think DNA makes you, but it doesn't shape you to a certain extent. So I think if you take my exact DNA and put it in someone in Nova Scotia, it's going to be completely like the experiences that shape that doppelganger of me is going to be completely different than the one that, is in British Columbia.
Oh, for sure. And especially with geographical things like, this Julian that I know had a very strong penchant for Pop-Tarts. And the Nova Scotian one probably, there's a chance that he could hate the existence. That could be the bane of his existence just because he grew up in a household that instead of having sweet breakfasts had savory breakfasts and stuff like that naturally makes somebody lean towards something other than the other. It seems like that there is a base stripped down version of, who somebody is. And that is very interesting because I was playing a video game that's supposed to be a horror game, but it's more of a horror in the fact of not like jump scary, but you're going to sleep and you're like, damn, that's a scary thought or question I just asked myself. And basically the premise of it is that this guy, and it reminded me of it was reminded of me by what you said about copying DNA. This guy basically has his brain copied and to run computer tests on how to cure an ailment of his. And eventually that brain copy gets put into a machine and sent to do something. And so now there's 2 copies of him. And granted, her big hurdle is copying somebody's brain, because I truly believe that, that's where all your memories are stored. That's where all your experiences are stored. That's where I would say you were stored. If you can chop off an arm, I'm still me. I just have way less of an arm and I can't use, So and I think that's a very interesting premise. And that's kind of where I a lot of my thoughts are built off of, is that whole question of if somebody could copy you, your brain, would you still be you, or would there be 2 yous? Or is there something that's not, if there's something that's not missing from your brain that completes you?
I think there's I don't know if it's 2 yous. I think there's another version. I don't know how to say this, but say you copied someone at the age of 26, they copy that 26-year-old's brain perfectly and put it in a machine or someone else. I think maybe for 5 seconds, if that, you're the same person. But after that, 26, that's, I'd say a quarter of your life. Not a quarter, maybe a third of your life. There's still so much that happens after 26 to 35. I'd say that's probably the average age in today's generation, where people are starting to have families or really settle into the field of work. There's so much that changes in that frame that those experiences early on may have shaped you then, but those 2 routes or decisions are going to go completely opposite from there.
Yeah, 100% agree with you in the fact that, it would have to you'd have to freeze that person and stop them from having any stimulus, any experiences, anything body growth, whatever, and keep that robot the same to have similar, people in the fact of, their brain is the same.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's thanks for tuning into a very abstract portion of this podcast and kind of just thinking a little bit more to the side or just conversating about, are you you or what made you you? I'm sorry we didn't use specific examples. You probably have some in your own because everyone's just going to be different. We don't know if that really adds to the conversation, but I think I picked up some things or just started thinking about some things differently.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you guys once again for listening. And also, I'm really curious to see if you could take the time to comment down below and whatever you're listening to about what you believe makes somebody someone. And if you want to get as specific as what makes you you, then please comment down below. I really appreciate it. And I think that this one is one of those more interesting podcasts that we've had.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. And maybe the people speaking on this are clones of us. You don't know. Catch you next time.